Greetings. I want to say something about criticism. Just leaving one of my regular routines at the basketball gym. I'm blessed and fortunate to play with a lot of high-level basketball players that have been successful at the highest level. The games get very intense. Competition gets very fierce. Sometimes tempers flare. But at all times, to play in this arena, you have to be able to take criticism. And that's what I want to say something about, criticism. Many of us can dish it out, but we can't take it when we get the same measure of criticism that sometimes we give to other people. Sometimes we can be very laser sharp, very sun hot with our criticism of other people. But the way life works is that as critical as I may be with one person, and I may be right in my criticism, there's somebody else in the arena. There's somebody else on the floor. There's somebody else in my life who is going to bring to me in some area where I may be deserving, or sometimes I may not be deserving, but most of the times I may be deserving of some criticism. That's what criticism is. It's a critique. It's to look with a critical eye at something that I do. Some way of doing something, some way I did something, some way I like to do something that may be okay, it may be great, but it may be in that circumstance or with that person, the way I do it makes them feel less than good, or it may produce a bad feeling for that person, or a bad reaction for that person. And that person has a right then to share with me how I made them feel or what they feel when I do that. It doesn't mean they're absolutely right. It doesn't mean that I'm absolutely right. Because as human beings, we operate on a continuum of perception. That perception is affected by environment, internal and external. That perception can be impacted from one moment to the next. So the thing that I do sometimes unconsciously can have a negative effect on a person, but that person has an obligation and they have a right to tell me if in some way I've unsettled them. And I have to be big enough. My skin has to be thick enough. If I want to be successful in life, I have to be able to take what I give. And I find that many of us, as black men in particular, and certainly black people in general, I'll say, we give good criticism. We really do. We're sharp people. We have the Spirit of God, and even in our worst, sometimes we see things. But the question I want to ask you, can you take as good as you give? See, we know you can't take criticism if in your relationship that let's say in the basketball context, somebody criticizes you or critiques the way you handle yourself on a play. And now for the rest of the game or the rest of the day, you don't want to pass the ball to that person. You don't want to talk to the person. You don't even want to be on the person's team anymore because they gave you a critique. But 5 plays earlier or 5 plays in a row, you gave somebody else even a more intense critique. But when the critique comes to you, you withdraw, you retreat. Your feelings are so hurt that now it shifts your attitude because you're used to giving the criticism. But when you get just the smallest increment of an expressed criticism from somebody that you're having this dynamic with, you can't handle it. And we know you can't handle it because you go from one extreme to the other. So sometimes in our relationship, we're all in with the person until they give us the slightest bit of critique. We hit the slightest bit of bump. Then we know, that person can't handle your critique when they totally withdraw. When they go from hot to cold in an instant over one or two critiques, then you know that person has a lot of spiritual growing to do. They can give it, but they can't handle it. So I want you to think about, are you that kind of person that can always give it, but you're not as skilled in taking it? In order for us to succeed, we got to be able to take it as well as give it. God bless.